Hi, Napri. Welcome. Happy to have you here. I think maybe people had trouble with the link because I have a lot more people signed up, so I'm a little surprised. We don't have a bigger crowd, so I'm just going to send out the link now and see if that was perhaps the issue. And then maybe folks will just all come crashing in at 8 p.m. But I do have some questions that I'm asking everyone. Good evening. Yeah, maybe you could answer these questions. Where are you signing in from? Where currently are you in your GRE journey? What is a GRE related problem that you are currently experiencing? Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, I haven't, I used to do these every month, and this is the first one that I've done in a really long time. So I'm excited to be back. Oh, good. We have more people coming in. Excellent. Hi, Sabira. Welcome. Um, yeah, let me know. Here, I'll also say hi in the chat. Probably the easiest way to communicate is to chat. Hello. And do chat me answers to these questions. And I'm hoping that more folks are on their way. We have about 50 people signed up, so we'll see. We'll see. Sabira, did you have any trouble with the link? Good, great. I'm happy to hear it. Hi, Reagan. When you can, I would love for everyone to answer some or all of these questions in the chat. You can chat to everyone, or you can chat just to me. Everyone, if you are comfortable chatting to everyone, and just to me if you are not, they are both fine, but it's kind of fun to have company in this journey. So I think it's nice to see who else is here. So in the chat, share your answers, and we'll just take a little bit of time to get to know each other before we launch in, and this will give time for folks to arrive in the room. I'll maybe wait until about 8:05 to launch into the proper content of the session. Ooh, Vera, I think I have some good tips for you today. A big theme of mine today is saving people from common mistakes that people make in their studying. So I'm glad that you're at the beginning. Maybe I can save you a little time. That's always my hope, is I can save people time. Welcome, Alyssa. Welcome, Corey. Welcome, Reagan. Um, let me know the answers to these questions in your chat. Cool. Maybe I think that are you preparing well is is a big question. I think we'll try to answer today. I want to talk about that question actually. So I think I can give you some guidance on that. And then will you be ready by the 22nd of June is a very difficult question to answer. And all we can do is the best we can do in the time that we have, and then see how it goes on the day. It's always a good idea, if possible, to think about taking this test more than once too. But could very well be ready by June 22nd. Depends where you are, how far you are from your goal. Depends what the issues are. Some issues are easier to fix than others. In general, quant is faster to fix than verbal. Verbal is a more complex skill, so verbal is slower. I would love to hear. Let's see. Oh, Corey, I see. Nice. I'm in Brooklyn, so I'm your neighbor. Great. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad. I feel I have things. I feel the two groups I can most speak to tonight are people who are new and people who've maybe been at this for a while, and perhaps need some renewed, refreshed motivation. So very cool. Cool. Regan, I want to say the best use of your time is probably not being here. You're totally welcome to stay, and I hope I can give you a tip of value, but your time might be better spent actually just like resting and having a nice time. And the best thing that you can do in like the 2 to 3 days before your test is to do anything that will get you into a relaxed, rested, good physical state, sleep, exercise, enjoyable time with friends, hobbies. That stuff's the best stuff to do. So again, I'm glad you're here. You're welcome to stay, but if your test is on Thursday, you may just want to sign off and go do something nice for yourself instead. Nice. Okay, cool. Folks who are new. Great. Well, welcome. I'm super happy to have us all here. We have a small group tonight, so I hope you will feel comfortable asking questions, engaging me. I'll try to also leave some time at the end for like an open Q&A. But I do have a little bit of a lesson prepared, and I want to start with that, and I think it will have value for all of us. So hello, my name is Kat. I teach the GRE. I have been teaching the GRE for 8 years, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. A fun fact about me is that I don't like standardized tests. Some of my colleagues love them, and bless them, and it's great. I personally don't like them, and it's sort of a weird irony that I've ended up teaching them, but I love helping people defeat them. And what I really want for all of you is not just that you get to your goal score. What I really want is that you do that you do it in the minimum amount of time that you need, that you do it as efficiently as possible so you can be done as soon as possible, and that hopefully in the process of preparing, you gain one at least skill or habit that benefits you elsewhere in your life, so that you are getting, as much value out of this process, because it's in some levels a bummer, I think, that we have to do these. So let's try to make it as fun and as rich and as useful as possible and as fast as possible. We're going to do some problems tonight. We're going to do some math problems. This is a little bit of a math focused session for reasons that are, I don't know, it's just what I wanted to do. And they're all found in this book. This is a great book to have if you just want a ton of practice problems organized by topic and difficulty. So everyone, I think, should get, for folks who are new, everyone should get the official guide. That's the purple book made by ETS. So if you're going to get one book, get the official guide. And if you want like a second, like physical book, the 5-pound book, I think, is a good option. And these free prep hours are on YouTube. And I think that they are one of the more underutilized free prep resources, because we've made these for a long time. People who've taught the GRE for like 15, 20 years have made these, and they've made them on every topic and all kinds of different skills and problems. So you could really learn like everything you need to learn about the GRE from these. There's just, it's not very well organized. So you have to do the organizational work for yourself. But I highly encourage you to check out these on YouTube. They will, I think, be a great free resource. One of my huge themes as a teacher is habit. What makes us good at the GRE? What helps us get better? We have good study habits. It's the quality that matters. So if you are willing to, I ask you, take your phone, put it away where you can't see it. Oh, I'm going to put it in a drawer. Put it away where you can't see it, because even if you can see it, you're paying less attention. And the GRE is more than anything a test of attention. That's my big GRE secret to start today. It's not really about math. It's about time management, self-management, attention to detail, problem solving, logic, things like that. It's using math to test these other skills. So practice good attention, be really present, be really focused. You may want a calculator for what we're going to do. So get that calculator, get a paper and pencil, and then do something that will be a wonderful practice to incorporate into your study routine. talking like, what are the top 5 behaviors of highly successful students? This has to be in the 1 or 2 maybe, which is be be in the problem, but also be thinking about the problem too. So we're both doing and reflecting, and we're keeping good records of what we're learning, because we're going to have to repeat. There's going to be a lot of repetition, and you're going to want to have really good records of what you've done. So today, as we go, I highly encourage you, have a piece of paper, have your piece of scratch paper or your notebook where you're going to work. Take a moment, draw a little column on the right side of the paper. And then as you do, you are going to take notes here. This is where you're going to actually do the problems. And then this is where you're going to note the bigger lessons. This is, oh, I want to remember this about this type of problem. Oh, wow, I haven't done geometry in forever. This is horrible. I need to look at geometry. Tracking those things you want to return to later. This way, when you want to come back tomorrow, you can look at this list and know where to start. And when you're about to take an official test, you can go back through all of these notes and refresh yourself on all the big things that you've learned and want to remember. So this is the stuff that's going to make your life easier, that's going to make your process faster. It is these little small, not super dramatic habit things. All right, so what are we actually going to teach? Well, in my other life outside of the GRE, I am a fiction writer. And so I thought we could play a little game called GRE Fact or Fiction. And I think this will be fun to play with folks who are both experienced with the test and not experienced with the test. So I have 5 statements about preparing for the GRE, and we're going to go through them one at a time. And I'm going to ask you if you think it is fact or fiction. And then we'll look at each of these and talk a little bit more about the lesson that we can derive from this. So GRE, fact or fiction? Here you go. Statement number 1. To prepare for the GRE, all you need to do is just do a ton of problems. Fact or fiction? Yeah, now you've been doing this for a while. Yeah. Yep, I like this. This is absolutely a fiction. Not at all true. Ooh, I messed up the colors. I want to do fiction in red. Not at all true. Volume of problem does matter, but more important things. So we're going to talk about what those more important things might look like. Number 2, you should never use the calculator. Fact or fiction? Absolutely fiction. Yes, love it. We know what's going on. Great. Number 3, you can learn no more than 50 words a week. This one got everyone. This is a fact. You should not learn more than 60 words a week. And I'm going to convince you, because I'm going to tell you what the absolute gold standard for vocab acquisition is. And you're going to see how involved it is and how much time it's going to take. And there is just a limit. There are hard limits on what we can get to stick in our brains in a given period of time. And for most people, 50 words a week is good. And that's going to take you 4 to 5 hours to do. And most people also just don't have more than 4 to 5 hours. And I'll tell you why, and we'll talk about how to do it. You can do math faster in your head. Yeah, really. It's really true. You really should not try to do more than that. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to cram. I'm never going to say never. There's always the one in a million person who will prove anything I say wrong. But for most of us normal people, should not try to do more than 50. You can do math faster in your head. Fact or fiction? It is maybe a fact in very specific instances, but in the broader picture of the GRE, it is a fiction. If you go into a test center and there's a person in that test center who is a professional test prep instructor, that will be the person in the room who is writing the most on their paper. I guarantee you, you watch me or anyone I work with, any, decade plus veteran GRE person, you watch them do this, so much written down, everything written down, so much on the paper throughout, verbal and quant. And we're going to talk about why. You should be able to prepare for this test in 3 months. Fact or fiction? Yes, this is fiction. This is an absolute fiction. And I've had students come and say to me, I've been told if you're not at your goal score in 3 months, then that's it, that, you're never going to get better than you'll get after 3 months. Absolutely untrue. I have seen people prepare for this test in 2 weeks. I have seen people prepare for this test in 2 years. I have seen both of those people have success. Most people need a lot more than 2 weeks. That was a very special situation. But 3 months is not a limit. I don't think there is a limit. I deeply believe, and I want to say this very strongly for everyone who's just starting with this test, I deeply believe that anyone can get any score on these tests with enough time and effort. And this is something that my colleagues and the people I've worked with always say too. The question is just how much time and effort do you want to put in? And, that's a complex question that depends on all the other factors in your life. So we'll talk a little bit maybe more about that. And because I know we have some folks who are new, maybe take some specific questions around timeline at the end of this session. But for now, I want to look at these one at a time and talk about just talk a little bit more about them and what we can learn from them. And then we're going to do some problems to illustrate these too. So false, you just need to do a ton of problems. Volume of practice does matter. It does help to have seen, enough problems that you can see patterns, that you've had a lot of repetition. Absolutely. But just repeating is not enough. There has to be really thoughtful and intentional review and structured work around each problem and around groups of problems and practice tests for improvement to happen. So I think one mistake that sometimes people make starting out is they put a lot of hours into the task, a high volume of hours. And then they just can't sustain that, and they burn out, or they can't really bring a high quality level of attention to those hours, because all of us are also probably working full-time jobs or in school full-time or caring for your children or parents. We all have a lot of other stuff going on. So much better starting out to say, I'm going to do 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's great. That is a great place to begin. Do that, get solid in that. And once you can do that with really good, high quality attention, then you can add more. So start small and add for folks who are just starting. The other thing that is really important is the way that you review problems. One thing I see a lot, I tend to get people at the start of their journey when they come to a class, and then I get people where their journey has gone off the rails and they come for tutoring. And when I have the second group where people, encountered unexpected challenges and need some extra help, what I see a lot is students come and say, I've done all of the 5-pound book. I've done all of the ETS materials. I've done, I've learned every word on the Magoosh app, and I'm still not at my goal score. And 100%, no, not 100% of the time, but a high 80% of the time, the issue is in the way they are reviewing and practicing, not in the amount of effort or time or care that they're necessarily putting into the task. So here's a problem. I'm going to give us 2 minutes to try this problem. Folks who've been at this for a while, this might be a fun triangles challenge. Folks who are new, do what you can. Don't sweat it. It doesn't matter if you're able to do this or not for what we're going to talk about next. All right, we're going to talk about this. Maybe everyone just chat me. How did this go? Send me a quick chat. Like, how do you feel about this? My guess is, so some of us might have answers. Some of us might be like, this is horrible. I'm very mad that we. But that's okay, because what I really want to talk about is how to review this problem, and I'm going to try to calibrate that for the different levels that we might be at in our preparation. Great. I love when things go badly, because then we have things to learn. The worse it goes, the more you have to learn, and that's great, because then you'll learn it and you'll get better. Always, harder when we're not sure what's going wrong. And so really our goal in reviewing is to first diagnose our issues. That's the goal of reviewing the problem. We're going to check the answer. If it's right, then I'm going to do a few different things. I'm going to check the explanation to make sure I got it right for the right reasons, because sometimes we think we've done something right and we've actually done some kind of fuzzy math. So make sure you got it for the right reasons, and then ask yourself, could it be more efficient? The correct answer to this is C. Very equal. So if you got it right, you might want to take a moment to see if you think the way you got it right is correct, if you feel it could be more efficient both in terms of time and energy. Because we're not just trying to conserve time, we're trying to conserve our limited willpower, intellectual energy, problem solving, creativity. Our brains are going to get tired. This is a 4-hour test. We aren't always asked to focus like this, particularly at this current moment in time. Next thing that you want to do, if you didn't get it right, is to think about first, can you get it right? Could you, if you had more time, if you were able to open the book, now that you know what the right answer is, can you figure it out? If so, what was the issue when you were timed? It probably has to do with strategy. And then you're going to find a few more problems like this to practice. If you can't get it right, then you're going to use the explanation, or do some knowledge and skill building. You may start the explanation and realize, this is silly for me to read this because I just need to go learn some triangles rules. So I'm going to walk us through how to do this problem. My goal is not that everyone feels like, oh, amazing, I completely understand this, because we need some background knowledge about triangles to do this problem, and maybe not all of us are there yet. But my hope is that everyone can walk away from this review with one action item. I'm going to learn more about this, or I'm going to go do this, or I'm going to practice this, so that we can all diagnose something useful for ourselves in this. This is a quantitative comparison problem. There's 7 of these. These are the first 7 questions in each of the math sections. And maybe if you are really new, your action item should just be to learn more about quantitative comparison questions, because these are unique to the GRE and they're a great place to start in your quant work. Or maybe you already know about these, but you know that you need to learn about triangles. There's a lot of geometry rules, but they show up a lot on the test. So geometry is worth memorizing. Start making flashcards now for these rules. There's a lot of little rules. So start making flashcards for them now. And then as the topics pile up, you won't get as overwhelmed. So those could be 2 really good action items if we're just starting out. If we're feeling good about triangles, good about QC, then maybe we get into the problem solving. So this is geometry. And one thing about geometry QC and geometry in general is that I usually, always have to use all of the information given. So I'm going to start this problem by redrawing this shape nice and big onto my paper. Let's pretend I've done that. And then I'm going to take a moment to process this information onto the shape on my paper. So step by step, DE is parallel to AC. Great. Yeah, I use these little symbols for parallel. Cool. BE equals 2EC. All right, how can I get that onto the diagram? How can I put that into math? Well, I'm dealing with things I don't know. Variables are very helpful for things I don't know. If BE is 2 of EC, that means EC is smaller. So let's make EC the small one, X. And then I know that this line here has to be 2X. Great. And then, oh, this one is simple. Great. This means that DE equals 12. All right. Maybe if that's as far as you got, awesome. Now the takeaway might become more about strategy, right? Or process or knowledge. Well, now I want to think about, I obviously have these two triangles here. Why are there these parallel lines? So I want to think a little bit about the parallel lines. What else can I learn? And I know that there's this rule. I might take a moment to just remind myself of this rule, that when a line intersects two parallel lines like this, it makes the same angles in both situations. This is like way back middle school, high school math. Oh, cool. So DE, if I imagine it sort of extends and this extends, this is that same identical intersection thing. So I'd say, okay, cool. That means this angle has to equal this angle. And that means this angle has to equal this angle. So maybe your takeaway is, oh, I need to review my parallel lines facts. Or maybe, oh, I need to remember to use all the information. Or maybe we get to the next step where we notice that I have two triangles, a little one, B, D, E, and a big one, A, B, C, that have all the same angles. And now I've gotten into really advanced geometry. Does anyone know what this is, what situation we have here when we have two triangles that have all the same angles? Yeah, they are congruent. They're similar triangles. So all the same angles, and that means their sides are proportional. So like if this side was 1 and this side was 2 and this side was 2, this side would have to be 4. The sides are going to be in proportion to each other. And that allows me then to put all the pieces together. I can say, okay, if BE is 2x, that's what proportion is that to all of BC? That's 3x. And that means if this is this is the same proportion, so we'll say 12 over AC, x's cancel. I can cross multiply. 36 equals, maybe your takeaway is, oh, I need to remember some algebra and put that on your list. 18 equals A. C. The quantities are equal. The answer is C. So I don't care if you lost me all the way back at learn about quantitative comparison questions. That's great. That's an amazing takeaway to have in place to start. I would love for everyone to chat me. What is either the specific issue you've diagnosed in this problem, or what is a takeaway? What is one thing you'll follow up on after going through this problem? Yes, rules of triangles, Sabir, so important. And I think I'm going to give you all a list of like the types of triangles that you need, the types of things you need to learn for triangles. Okay, so key triangle fact areas. You want to know the third side rule. You want to know about similar triangles. You want to know about right triangles. You want to know about special right triangles, sort of triangles, triangles in general that are non-right. And I think that is, oh, and then you also want to know about triangles inscribed in circles. Yeah, it's Coyote, that's the start, I think. And then I think the mechanics being fast is part of it. And then it is sometimes being able to see connections between different shapes as well. So I think about like what you're describing, understanding the properties of all the shapes on kind of two levels. Like first I'd do all the shapes individually, and then I'd start thinking about problems that combine different types of shapes, because that then becomes the next layer. But I absolutely agree with you. Like a huge way I see people losing time deep into their prep process is that they haven't put enough time into just drilling the rules and the mechanics and the facts, especially in geometry. So I think that is a very astute point. Cool. All right. My summing up of how we study is essentially this. We do things to test our knowledge, maybe a timed set or a practice test, or even just an individual timed problem, but we do some time practice. We review it to figure out, okay, where am I missing skill? Like maybe I need to do some untimed practice to learn a new process. Maybe I need to review some different, facts and things like that. And then we also need to do some additional timed practice with the sort of strategy and execution side. And then we repeat. So basically, we're always going through the same cycle in a study session. We sit down, we try a couple of problems, we review them, we use what we learned from that review to establish a couple additional tasks where we're learning or further practicing. We set a takeaway or goal for the end of that, and then we follow up on the same day. And it becomes a very consistent and repetitive structure, even as the content is changing. And I think that that's in general, you may find a slightly different structure works for you. That's absolutely, this is always a very individual process, but find a good, consistent structure for your study sessions that mixes practice, doing, and reflecting. Thinking of it, reviewing it, and finding that balance. I think a good balance is like a third of the time doing, 2/3 of the time reflecting. So if I spend 10 minutes doing problems, that probably gives me an additional 20 minutes of work in terms of understanding those problems, following up on the issues that are revealed in my view. All right. The calculator. Sometimes I see people being really stubborn about not using the calculator. And while it is true, this is what the calculator looks like. It is clunky, it is error prone, it's easy to make little mistakes on the calculator. You do, in fact, sometimes need to use it. And everyone is going to have a different balance. Know when you need it. When is it faster? For me, I don't like decimals. So if I'm working with decimals, I'm almost always using the calculator. That's not true of that for everyone, Also, as you get tired, you may need it more. And finally, if anyone ever feels anxious taking this test or anxious doing math, I feel anxious doing math all the time still, even though it is my job. So I relate to that. Where does it help manage nerves? Sometimes we may need to use the calculator a little bit more in an official test just because it helps us feel calm. So these are 3 important things to just be thinking about and noticing as you study. To begin with, just notice when you use the calculator, when you don't. Begin with noticing. Think about what works for you, and then commit to a plan and practice it. I want to do an exercise that might help us with that. Here are 2 questions. I'm going to ask you to do the first one with the calculator, and then do the second one with pencil and paper. And these are percent questions. And if you know that you don't know anything about percents right now, you're welcome to use this time to go look up some facts about percents. But I'll give us maybe 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes-ish to try this. So top one with a calculator, bottom one on paper, then we'll reflect. Right. I'm going to give everyone the answers. I can talk briefly about each of them as well if folks would like. But first, I just want to give you the answers. This should be 9. This should be 300. And then ask if anyone was, doing calculator versus paper, how did it feel different? Doing it on the paper versus doing it with the calculator. All right, I'll start walking through in case it's helpful while if anyone has thoughts on the difference, I would love to hear. 7% of 9. Immediately, this is like, oh, gross nightmare percent. So I'm just doing this on my calculator always. Like if I see something like this, I'm personally always doing it on the calculator. So I put into my calculator 0.07 times 9, and then I write down the result. 0.63. So this part is in the calculator, but then this part is on my paper. Then I write on my paper 0.63 is what percent of 7. So of 7, 7 goes on the bottom. I write this down. And then I plug this into the calculator. I get 0.09. back to my paper, and then I multiply that by 100, and I do that either in my head or on the paper, 9%. But if I am using the calculator, I'm still doing a lot on the paper. I'm only doing one step at a time. So when we need the calculator, just one step at a time, then write it down. So that's how we avoid making little mistakes with the calculator. Now, this second one is, for me personally, probably the upper limit of what I would do without a calculator. In fact, I'm not sure I would do this without a calculator, but I'll talk through how to do it. 20% of 195, well, I know that 10% of 195 is just 1/10. Dividing by 10, I just take the decimal place and I move it over 1. So 10% is 19.5. 19.5 times 2 is going to give me 20%. So that's 10 times 2 is 20. 9 times 2 is 18. So 20 plus 18 is 38. 0.5 times 2 is 1. So 39. That is what I am doing in my head as I do that. I get 39, and then I want to know that 20% of 195 is what percent of 13. So now I have 39 divided by 13. That gives me 3, multiply it by 100. So for me, this top one is definitely a calculator problem. This bottom one is the upper limit of what I could do on paper. Probably I would even do a calculator for some aspect of the second one, for me, for the sake of speed and accuracy. So as this is to illustrate that some problems need calculators, some don't. And the best way to know how to do this, to make this decision, is to just practice problems in both ways and notice what works for you where, and then make a plan. A lot of just repetition, trial and error, figuring out what works for you. Any other thoughts or comments on calculator versus no calculator on this problem? Anyone have a very different feeling about loving calculators or not calculators with percents? I don't love doing them on paper. Yeah, you can also totally do this in an algebraic way too. That's a completely good and lovely way to do this type of percent problem as well. Kind of elegant too, because we can sort of translate the word and number like phrase. Oh yeah. And then Corey, that's a really interesting category of problem, and it's worth thinking about tricks. If you notice like, oh, I'm sort of flipping things around, or I'm reading things in a certain way, a really good thing to then do is to add a habit. So, every time I see one of those like multi-part percent problems that I tend to misread, I'm going to make myself read it twice, or I read everything twice because I tend to rush and make small errors. So think about like a concrete habit change you could make that would help you not do that, because the attention to detail and the small error stuff is a huge part of this test. Really, one of the best things you can do to quickly boost your score in a matter of weeks is to eliminate all small errors in math. If you have any small errors left, get rid of them. That is a great sort of last minute thing to do. On a completely different subject, I want to talk about the maximum number of words that you should ever try to learn in 1 week. And I would only do this if you really know that vocabulary is a huge issue for you. I think some good news is that vocabulary seems to be trending easier on the official test. And so you may not need to do as much vocab work as you maybe think if you're just starting out. I would really encourage you to take one of the ETS power prep tests. These are the ones made by the makers of the GRE. I find that these power prep tests are the best predictor of official test verbal score. Quant is a little different, but verbal, this is where to get a good read. So, if you're starting out, go take one of these, use that to set a baseline for your score in Google ETS power prep test. And especially for verbal, I think it will help you assess how significant is vocab as an issue for you. You may decide it's very significant, and then I have a plan for you, but you may also be able to say, I maybe don't have to do as much of that as I had thought. No one can learn more than 50 a week. It's just too much. It takes too much time. It doesn't retain. Because remember, we're not just trying to cram all these words in our head this week. We're trying to learn words this week that we're going to remember when we take the test in 3, 6, 9 months. So we need to be retaining things long term. If we were cramming, it would be different, but this isn't a good cramming task. Also, like, most of us just don't have the time it would take to learn more. This is going to take you 4 to 5 hours a week. Just for this, right? Just for learning words. So I'll show you briefly why, because this is going to illustrate something important about how we learn. We forget things really fast. So it is very normal to review all your triangle rules yesterday and then to only remember 50% of your triangle rules today. That is how memory works. But what happens is every time we touch a topic, every time we look at it, we reset and we slow down the speed that we forget at. So basically, by returning to something over and over again over time, we're like slowing down the speed of forgetting to 0. And then we know it. And we know that it usually takes 5 repetitions over increasing lengths of time. Notice these like dots are getting further and further apart in time. So this is why we need to repeat. This is also why people sometimes have the experience of like, oh my gosh, I learned that, and then I couldn't recall it on the test. You just haven't learned it solidly enough. You just need more repetitions. And we can structure a vocab study plan around this. We can say, we are going to move words from deck to deck as we get them right. Once we get to deck 5 and we get it right, we're done. We can retire that word. So we review deck 1, we get it right, goes to deck 2. On and on. If it's wrong, it goes all the way back to deck 1. Then we space these decks out over different intervals of time. This is where it gets tricky. So some we see every day, but the words we almost know we challenge ourselves with every 16 days. And we can use this little calendar. So as you can see, this is a nightmare to do. I've had students try to do this. I've had students do a lighter version of this, but I've never seen someone like fully execute a Lightner box like this. It's called the Lightner box. But this is like, if you were going to do the absolute most rigorous, most intense, like time-tested, scientifically proven method of acquiring words, this would be the way to do it. And there's a couple other pieces to it, like how you make the flashcards and things like that, because you should be building your own flashcards. So this is going to take a lot of time. So you think about taking some time to build cards, reviewing these different decks. You want to learn 50 words, it's going to take about 4 to 5 hours a week. You can feel like you're learning more than 50 words in less than 4 to 5 hours a week, but it's my experience is that when everyone I've seen who I've worked with who said I'm learning 100 words a week, they aren't actually learning those words in a long-term attainable way. And so again, always with studying, we have to be very careful about the things that feel good to do, because they're not always the things that bring us the most benefit. All right. Next myth: you can do math faster in your head. This was a contentious one, so I want to speak to this. If you were doing one easy problem, I absolutely believe that we could all do it faster in our heads. For sure. But that's not what we're being asked to do. We're being asked to do 40 mixed difficulty problems in a 4-hour test. That is a lot. So I'm sure there is someone out there who is like a professor of theoretical physics at Princeton who could do all this in their head. Maybe not, because maybe by the time you're doing that level of stuff, you're so far beyond GRE math. I did actually once watch a theoretical physicist solve a GRE problem in the like most beautiful and roundabout way I have ever seen. But most of us can't, and we shouldn't, because it's tiring. It takes a lot of mental energy to hold everything in your head, and we have limited mental energy on the test. So everyone, if you're going to remember one thing from today, if there's one thing that I berate everyone with, write down more than you think you need to. Be accurate, be lazy. Don't ask too much of your brain. Also, if you make small mistakes, this is one of the best ways to cure small mistakes. So it conserves energy, it saves us from small errors, it allows us to check our work effectively, and it is ultimately, when we are tired, more efficient. The idea is everything is being held on the paper. The paper is like an extra set of extra gigabytes for your short-term memory, so you don't have to tax your short. That's why I invented writing, to outsource things from our brains. So use that. Yes, Alyssa, you will absolutely get paper. If you are going to take this at a test center, you will get unlined white paper. So if you were thinking about taking this at a test center, I encourage you to practice with unlined white paper. If you are taking this at home, you will have to have an erasable surface. And I'm not going to talk too much about the erasable surface, but there's a lot of good advice online for how to find that. So thinking about where you're going to take it. And then, don't do all your practice on the erasable surface if you do it at home, because you'll want some written notes, but do start doing some of it. All right, let me see where we're at for time. Cool. I think we have time to do, actually, no, I'll show you the exercise we were going to do. And if you want to do it later, you can screenshot it, but I want to keep going so that I can answer questions. Ooh, go back. Do number 1 in your head, do number 2 on paper, and then just reflect on what feels different. This is if you are sort of like not sold on my spiel about writing things down, do this. Also, every time you review a problem, how could your scratch work be better? And also, importantly, if you make a small error, write out that problem correctly at least 3 times. Because every time you make a mistake, you train yourself to make a mistake, and you have to do it correctly more times than you did it incorrectly to untrain that. Otherwise, you'll keep making that kind of mistake over and over again. We make careless errors in clusters. So I think it's probably important for people who really need the lines to keep their work organized. So I think you want to make sure that when you lose any kind of line or grid, your work remains structured and sort of helpful to you. The more you can just prepare for exactly what the experience of the actual test will be like, the more you're just reducing variables that things could go wrong. If you are someone who is, I am saying this to someone who is not particularly good at like being neat and organized in their written work. If you already are quite organized, and you may not find there is a big difference. So it may not make a big difference for you. For some people, and I'm one of them, I think it does. And I also just always like people to have practiced in as, test like a way as possible. I think it's a good habit. Cool. Yeah, doing it in your head is tough. Even if it comes out right, it still feels tough. Corey, I'll be interested if you try the second one on paper and feel there's sort of a difference in how it feels. That feels good. If anyone wants to save this to do later, take a screenshot. I'm going to move on because they want to talk about my last point. And we only have a few minutes left. Yeah, yep, it does. And it can help you be calm too. That's the other really great thing about working on paper, is it just can help you stay steady and stay at a steady pace. Because really, when I take this test, I want to be doing every single step at the same pace. Some problems take longer because they have more steps, but I don't want to be like going really fast and then really slow. So the paper helps me bring that steadiness as well as the confidence in the surety. I want to speak about timeline, especially for folks starting out. 3 months is this, a standard period of time. I think many folks need a little bit more time than this. Yeah, I'm glad you found doing it on paper was easier. You're still do everything on paper, especially when you think you don't need to. That's like, because when we think we've got it is when we're most vulnerable to little errors. I think a good, 3 months can often be a good point to sort of pause, consider where you're at, look around. Um, and it might be a good point at which to decide, oh, I'll take a little break. But it's very normal to do a chunk of preparation, get, halfway, 2/3 of the way to your goal, take a little time off, come back and do another chunk for another month, 2, 3. So obviously we have to work within the constraints of the admission cycle that we're targeting. We do the best we can with that. Even in that case, I sometimes see folks will say, I'm going to put this down and come back next year. And then there's this big difference that happens there. So I want to emphasize that no matter where you are starting, where you want to go, you can get there. The only constraints will be time that you have, the time that you want to commit to this, the time that you can commit to this, and when you need to be done, how much time you can give yourself. And that just, I think, becomes a question you negotiate with yourself. I will, to make this, I think, I think like a 120, 100 to 200 hours. I know that's a big range, but I see different outcomes, and I'm going to try to just list some of the factors that might determine where in that range you fall. Faster fixes are, do you need to learning the format and strategies of the test, just familiarity, small errors, solid reading skills, but like need to learn standardized test reading practices, and used to like math, needs to refresh, even if it's been a long time. So these tend to be situations where I think folks can have, maybe in some cases, a timeline under 3 months. Things that might need more than 3 months. If like learning a lot of acquiring vocabulary can be an issue. I think if you did a lot of primary and secondary education, not in America, because in America we have to do so many standardized tests. So I think baseline Americans are sometimes more like inoculated to this stuff in the way. So that sometimes can be slower just because there isn't the baseline, like, oh, I've done this before. Not always true. Some of my students coming from other educational systems have been very fast and very successful, but that might mean you want to give yourself more time. Reading, like core skills, if you're like, I've never loved reading, or like test anxiety, bad experiences with standardized system and like some kind of math trauma. I've never liked math. I was not taught math. I think a lot of times we don't like math because we're not always taught math very well. Those are things, and they're fixable. This is what I want to say. All of these things are fixable. I've seen people improve wildly in all of these issues. It's just on the spectrum of like 100 to 200 hours, 2 to 6 to 8 months. These are the things that can help determine where we are in that timeline. Intensity, we can speed this up by committing more hours per week to the task, but those 100 hours or 200 hours do have to be spread out over some period of time because of that spaced repetition effect that we talked about. So that is my how can I make sure the work done in those hours is efficient? That is a wonderful question. It is not a simple answer. The simple answer that I can give you, and then I'm gonna try to keep speaking to these themes in some subsequent sessions as well, is make sure that you are focusing on diagnosis and repetition. So, and being really like, I really want to figure out exactly what's going wrong, and then I want to drill that thing over and over until it feels solid. So that's sort of the core pattern that you want to be aiming for. And then this question of like, how do you study time efficiently is something that I spend a lot of time with people on. It's a long answer, but it is an important question. I'm going to keep trying to answer it in these pre-prep hours. Awesome. I would love if you are willing to share with me in the chat, what is one thing that you will take away from today's session, big or small, but what is one thing that if you're going to remember one thing from today, what do you want it to be? Could be an action you're going to take, could be a lesson you want to remember. But this is a great way to ensure that you remember the important stuff, reinforce it. And it also helps me as a teacher. Yeah, Severa, that is a really great one. Yes, that is also a really great one. Those are two very good points. I'm very pleased. I'm gonna put a couple links. Yes, yeah. And I have so many thoughts on the small errors. I think I'll share a couple of thoughts on small errors actually, because I think I can give you maybe some tips that will help if that's a big issue. I do just want to say you can come and take a free class, or the intro first sessions of all of our courses are free. So if you want more, if you're like, I would really like a basic foundational like introduction to the structure of the test, come to one of our free classes. I think I'm teaching one in a couple of weeks. And then my colleague Greg, who's amazing, is teaching one in July. And we do these free prep hours every month. And there's some other free stuff on there too. So some free things. And then if anyone really wants to get out there with their GRE prep, I have a new project where I am writing a newsletter about the tarot and the GRE and tips for GRE studying based on the tarot, which I'm going to argue is a great combination, but if that at all intrigues you, I have a free newsletter on that. And then lots of great free resources online. I believe you can have an excellent time for free in preparing for the GRE. That's my official content. If anyone has other questions they want to ask, I'm happy to stick around for another couple of minutes. And I'm also going to just run through a couple suggestions for folks who are dealing with small errors. When I was hired at MPrep, I did not have a 99th percentile quant score. I could not begin working until I had a 99th percentile quant score. I was moving to New York City and was very broke. So I was very motivated to improve my quant score so that I could earn money. And my biggest issue with small errors, I had since elementary school, had a lot of trouble with arithmetic, small errors, things like that. So I'm going to tell you what I did personally that helped. One, I kept a log of all small errors. Every time I made a small error, I had to go log it. And then I would have to categorize it and describe it in detail. And this accomplished a few things. One, it was painful. It hurt. It took up so much time. It was so annoying. So it really motivated me to not want to make small errors. The other thing that it did is I could spot patterns. And I learned that I don't make 100 small errors. I make maybe 15 small errors over and over again. 2, for every error and pattern, I wrote down a habit or behavior change. I made these concrete things. So what I do not think is helpful is to say, pay more attention. Just yelling at ourselves in our heads actually does nothing. It probably just stresses us out and makes things worse. What does help is to say, I will read every word problem twice. Or I will add extra parentheses to keep track of negative signs. Little tiny habit things like this. And then, and this is the final piece, and this is the most difficult, and yet in a way the most important, is what I said earlier. Every error in that log, rewrite the correct work for that problem 3 to 5 times. And finally, last but not least, take a deep breath before every problem. Practice this. Practice routinely doing this. Deep breath. And when you deep breath, shoulders back and down, upright, away back from the screen. This will help you keep a clear mind. It will help you keep up your energy. Having a clear mind and energy are two things we really need to pay attention to detail. Enormously helpful with stress as well. So 4 things, 4 very concrete things to do with small errors. These also are applicable perhaps to other challenges as well. Logging, deliberate behavior change, deep breathing, and physical reset. Even if you're not dealing with small errors, these things are helpful. So I hope that you can take my, my wish for all of you is this week, do one new thing in your studying. Add one new habit, change one thing. Or if you are just starting, commit to touching this task for at least 15 minutes on at least 5 days in the next week. Just establish consistency. Give yourself an easy ramp. And if that's good, next week it's 20, then it's 30. But we need easy entry points to build a consistent habit. And if you've fallen out of your habit, start small again, right? Like I spent all of last year, I've been terrible at meditation my whole life. And I spent all of last year working up my way from 5 minutes a day to 30 minutes a day, which is this huge achievement. And then I got really busy in the last couple of months and I haven't done it. And so now I'm going to have to start back at 5 minutes and do 5 minutes a day for a month until I get good at that. And then I can, now I can earn back my time. But be patient with yourself, start small, be consistent. You will get there. It is possible. This test can be, anyone can defeat this test with enough time and effort. All right. I hope that was helpful. I am grateful to all of you for being here tonight. And we do these, like I said, a couple of times a month. Come check out the classes and good luck. I hope you get your goal score as soon as possible and can be. You're welcome. Have a good night.